everybody to the first Power Rankings at here at I'm Not a Coach. I'm your host, Dave Huerta. Thank you so much for joining us here. But, I mean, first Power Rankings, middle of the season, why not? That's how you do it, right? That's how week one all the way through week eight. Don't need power rankings. You don't need any of that. You don't have to do your power rankings until week eight because football doesn't really start until late October. But anyway, first power rankings for this channel. Thank you so much for watching or even joining us live here. So we're going to get started. And first, we're going to do some honorable mentions, basically how these power rankings work. Obviously, I take into account this past week, and I look a little bit towards this next coming week, kind of what the opponent is, how they are health-wise, and things like that, how they match up pretty well. Don't worry, we're not going to go into too much detail. We're not going to get into crazy analytics, things like that, because at the end of the day, that's not really what these are about. And honestly, being correct is not really what this is about either for me, because that's boring. Imagine if I was right every single week, a 1 through 10. It's the whole point of these is, to be honest with you, is for it to be awful, for me to be wrong, because that's what's funny. So just imagine I put the Packers at 1 and they get utterly destroyed by, granted this week they're playing the Lions, but if they were going up against the Browns, and I put them at number 1 because I think they're going to destroy the Browns, blah, 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 and then the Packers lay an egg, that is hilarious. You guys can look back at these and be like, wow, this guy, ooh, ooh. So don't take these too seriously. We're going to do this every week. It's going to be fun. It's going to be things like that, and just enjoy it. So we are going to talk a little bit about stats, but not a whole lot. Nothing too crazy. We're going to maybe talk about one thing that I think about this team, what I like, things like that. So to start out, we are going to talk about some honorable mentions here. And the first honorable mention is going to be the Philadelphia Eagles. So they are coming off a nice little win here, beating Cincy, which I know at this point in this year doesn't seem like a very big thing to do. Nothing, Cincy is probably going to be struggling to make the playoffs or contend for the playoffs. They are 3-5, I believe, but still, that team is very, very tough. You got Joe Burrow still healthy. You got Jamar Chase, and you got a defense who is playing well below their standard over the last couple of years, but they still got some decent guys, especially in that secondary. So the fact that the Eagles were able to come away with a win against a team that is still very, very competitive. The Eagles easily could have been blown out, and I think everybody would have been like, yeah, that sounds about right. This is Nick Sirianni and underperforming Eagles, especially the Eagles coming off a huge victory over the Giants not too long ago. So it would not have been surprising if they would have just laid an egg or just gotten beat by Joe Burrow on a last-second touchdown or a last-second field goal, things like that. But the Eagles coming away with a big victory, and they are a little bit on a roll. They're playing a little bit better. Their running game seems to be getting a lot better. Jalen Hurts seems to be playing significantly better than what he did in the early part of this year and the late part of last year. So granted, he's not playing at an MVP level, but he's playing within, I would say, the top half of quarterbacks. And when you look around the league, that's maybe not as high of a bar as it used to be, but I mean, the fact that you're playing consistent football, making big plays with your legs and with his arm, that's going to be bowling well for Philadelphia the rest of the way, especially as their schedule gets a little bit tougher, just because there's going to be some more individual matchups and NFC matchups. So that's the first honorable mention, the Philadelphia Eagles. Next, we have the San Francisco 49ers. So I actually debated whether I should put the 49ers in my top 10. Granted, they wouldn't have been very high in the top 10, but I was thinking about it just for one. Obviously, they have struggled this year. They're 4-4, but there's just something about this team. I don't know if it's me being a Packer fan and always having a little bit of a fear of the 49ers in the back of my head. This team just competes. They have never just been out. None of their losses have been so humiliating or anything like that. They've always made it close. They took the Chiefs basically to the almost the brink, at least until the fourth quarter, where injuries, things like that, took their toll on this team, and that's kind of why that's why they've been 4-4. This is also why they're honorable mentions coming into this week, because I'm not exactly sure what we're gonna get week to week. For the most part, they're starting to get healthy. That's also why I put them in here, because this team could easily be the rest of the way. They can easily be a top 5 team if they get healthy. They got to get Christian McCaffrey. Looks like he's going to be coming back at some point in the next week to maybe 2. And that's going to be a huge boost to them. This past week, Jordan, the running back who had been basically filling in for McCaffrey, he went out. But then Garendo just completely went off. So it just kind of tells you how this offense works. It's just plug and play. They're going to have the players to compete in every single game. No injury is going to be too big for this team not to necessarily be in games. So far, it's kept them from winning most of their games that they probably should have. But as they get healthier and they start figuring it out, I have no doubt that the 49ers are going to be competing for a spot in the playoffs. Whether they're going to win the division, that division is just wide open. Nobody seems to want to win it. You got the Seahawks, who started out 3-0 and just have fallen apart. You have the Rams, who are in a similar boat, and we might talk about them not too far in the future here. But the Rams, they're starting to get healthy at the same time. They look good this past week against Minnesota and things like that. But this 49ers team has the talent to be able to run away with this division, even though they are 4-4. They could easily rattle off 4 or 5 straight victories, and it would not surprise me. So big reason why they are honorable mentions. They could easily be in the top 10, in my opinion. And speaking of the NFC West, we have the Los Angeles Rams. All right, why the Rams? They are, I believe, 3-5 at this point in the season. But similar to the 49ers, they are just starting to get healthy. This past week, they were able to get Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp back on the offense, and you could clearly tell that this offense, this team, is significantly different than when those two guys are not in the lineup. You saw Matthew Stafford get the ball out early, had no problem throwing it deep if he had to, and on top of that, when you get the ball in both of those guys' hands, even if it's even if it's behind the line of scrimmage, most likely they're going to be rattling off some decent yardage after the catch. And that is a huge, huge thing for this offense. They already run the ball fairly well. They have a good running back. But when you are able to be an actual threat in the passing game, that opens up the lanes. You saw that against Minnesota. And I think the Rams are, as long as they can continue to stay healthy, I think they're going to be right there with the 49ers competing for this. I think they have the potential to be the second best team in this division, and I think they have a legitimate chance to fight for the 7th and 6th seed in the NFC. But once again, got to stay healthy, and they got to win. They're kind of behind the 8 ball. They're 2 games behind. I think maybe a game and a half behind the division leaders in this in this division. But again, there's another team that I could see rattling off 2-3 straight wins over the next couple weeks. So, and another honorable mention, one more, it's going to be the Chicago Bears. This team was literally 2 seconds away and a batted pass away from winning and going to what were they going to be? 6-2, I believe. And it took a miracle throw by Jaden Daniels with 2 seconds left from the 35. We obviously saw that reaction. We live streamed that one on the channel. That was a crazy win for the Commanders. But don't get it twisted. The Bears, they looked awful in that first half, but then in the fourth quarter, Caleb Williams and that offense turned it up, man. They were starting to rip off some big runs, and on top of that, they were getting into rhythm in the passing game. And Williams, he willed that team to a victory basically until Jaden Daniels topped him with just a few seconds left. I think the Commanders got the ball back with about less than 25 seconds, or maybe even less than 20, when they got that ball on the offensive side of the ball. So this easily could be a big victory week for the Bears. Instead, a once in a season type of throw by one of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL dropped him down. But I believe that if they can continue to play the way that they have played on offense, especially, that defense has already been solid. They've been solid since halfway through last season, and they continue to be good this year. But it took a while for that offense, for them to really get going. And over the last month, they have been one of the better, if not one of the best, young offenses in the NFL. So that's why the Chicago Bears are in the honorable mentions. And finally, the final one, honorable mention. Trust me, in the future, there's not going to be this many teams, but it's just there are some decent teams right now. They're playing really good football. The last one in the honorable mentions is the 5-2 Minnesota Vikings. So Minnesota, literally less than 14 days ago, they were one of only two undefeated teams in the NFL. They were 5-0. They were looking good. They were heading into their bye, blah, blah, blah. And their offense was amazing. Sam Darnold was phenomenal, borderline MVP candidate. Jones was coming back healthy after the bye. Their defense had been one of the best, if not the best in the NFL, at least in terms of getting pressure on the quarterback, consistently making it difficult for quarterbacks to even complete any kind of passes on them. But then, big loss to the Lions, which, with the way the Lions have been playing and the Vikings were playing, one of those teams, it could have been any of them. And then finally, this past Thursday against the Rams, they had that penalty in the end zone that should have been called, but they still had to go 90-plus yards to even just tie the game. And that offense completely disappeared in the second half. Minnesota could not get anything going. Jefferson could not get open. Their other receivers could not get open. They couldn't run the ball with Aaron Jones, which is something that they haven't been able to do all season long. Sam Darnold, he didn't play awful, but he definitely didn't play. He wasn't playing as well as he's been the first month and a half. So that's why the Vikings are an honorable mention. 2 straight losses. Things are kind of, some of the cracks are starting to show, but we'll see if they can pull it together. They're still going to be in the playoff race for sure. That's not going to change. But just for momentum sake and for, I think, their sanity, they got to get some victories in the next couple weeks. They got to go at least 2-1 over the next 3 weeks, in my opinion. Otherwise, you don't want to go 6-4 if you start at 5-0. So, all right. So that is the honorable mentions here. So let me know what you thought of those. And then, now that we're going to get into it, so some of you if you looked at the thumbnail, some of you are saying, okay, Power Rankings, Week 9, I get that, but what is Halloween edition? Well, outside of talking about the teams and where their rankings and maybe 1 or 2 statistics that I find, it's Halloween, man. Let's have some fun. So with every team from 10 to 1, I'm going to give them a comparison, or at least attribute them to a horror icon in cinema. So this is not one of the examples, but let's just say if it was the Cincinnati Bengals, it could be, one of the. I'm trying to think of a horror villain, but think of somebody, Freddy Krueger, and I'll kind of, do a 1 to 2 sentence of why I think they kind of compare well with each other. They mesh well with each other. So once again, this just proves that the power rankings are just for fun, and that's what we're gonna do. So from 10 to 1, not only am I going to talk about the team, but I'm also going to talk about how they match up with a horror icon villain in cinema. So let's have some fun, and we're going to start out with number 10 here, and that is the Denver Broncos, and they almost match my shirt. So I got a bam. So the Denver Broncos, they are 5-3 at this point in the season. They have looked significantly better over the last 3 or 4 games than they did when things were kind of starting out. There was a lot of Bo Nix was, you know, there was talks of, oh, this is, this just proves that they overdrafted him. He's not the guy, things like that. But over the last couple of weeks, we've seen Bo Nix grow as a passer, grow as a leader of that offense. And on top of that, I think you've seen him grow into and how comfortable he is just slinging the ball and also creating yardage with his feet. And I think that's going to be huge for the Denver Broncos going into November, December kind of football. Does this mean that they're going to be there? They're going to be competing for the top 2 seeds or 3 seeds? Probably not. I think the division is definitely for Kansas City, but I think Denver at this point, I think they have a legitimate chance for a 5th or 6th seed, potentially even I was going to say a home game, but obviously the 5th seed no longer gets a home game now. But I think they're going to have a decent chance to make the playoffs for the first time in a long time. And it won't be just, oh, they're going to be lucky to be in the playoffs. I think this team is one of the better teams in the NFL playing right now, and they're looking good. They had a tough loss a couple weeks ago, but before then, I think they had 4 straight wins, and now were able to get a pretty close victory over the last couple weeks. So they've been tough, and I think they're going to continue to be tough. That defense is very dang good. They're dealing with some injuries, but I think they're going to be pretty solid down the road. And, I think they controlled that game with Carolina, which is not a tough thing to do. Carolina is one of the worst teams in the NFL. But the fact that they were able to be in control from beginning to end, I think that shows the growth that Denver had. I mean, we're talking about a team that scored, 9 points a couple weeks ago against the Jets, who are one of the worst teams in the NFL. So able to come in at home and be able to beat a team that they should beat by 2 touchdowns. And I think they could have gone for even more points. I think there was a whole thing with Sean Payton kind of keep on forcing that ball down the field, throw or run or things like that. And he was just saying, no, we were not trying to run up the score. We were just trying to make sure that we didn't blow it. And I think that's a good mindset to have, especially for a team that has struggled for a long time, has been one of the bottom feeders in the AFC for the last couple of years. So I like the Broncos heading into their next couple games, and I think they're going to be able to do well as long as Bo Nix continues to grow as a quarterback and just have confidence, man. This is your rookie year. If you see it there, throw it. Be confident in it. If it ends up something happening, let it go. Keep on going. So Denver Broncos, my number 10 team of Week 9. All right, next we have, this one might be a little controversial. Some people probably want this team a little bit higher, but I'll talk about why. And that is the Houston Texans. So they are coming off a win, obviously, over their division rival, Indianapolis Colts. So this team, we know how explosive this offense can be with C.J. Stroud. We saw it last year. We saw it this year. And obviously they added some weapons with Joe Mixon, things like that. He's playing phenomenal. But over the last 2 weeks, we've seen not only some cracks in the offense, but even some issues, against the Packers a couple weeks ago or 2 weeks ago. They could not get that offense going, man. They were struggling. C.J. Stroud threw for less than 90 yards in that game. It was a tough go for that offense. Joe Mixon, once again, he's been able to keep them going, but you're starting to see some of the injuries kind of um, affect this offense, this very young offense, which I think is a big reason why you're seeing some of this stuff. I think as this team gets older and grows together, I think some of this stuff is going to be smoothed and going to be not as much of an issue over the next couple of years. I think this team is going to be great, and I think they're going to be competing for Super Bowls. But right now, year two, C.J. Stroud having a little bit of a slump compared to how he did as a rookie. And on top of that, you have injuries to your receivers. They just lost Diggs for the rest of the year. I think it was a torn ACL. And on top of that, they're also dealing with Nico Collins still out. He's still a couple weeks away. So like right there, those are two of your top three options in the passing game. And Diggs was a big addition for them in the offseason, almost as big as Joe Mixon has been. And him out now for the rest of the year. It's a 1-year contract, so who knows if he'll be back with the Texans. Hopefully he is, because I think he does really well with what that offense likes to do. But this team is going to have to figure out who they are without some of their big key contributors on offense. And they're going to have to rely more on Joe Mixon and C.J. Stroud's arm to be able to make plays and elevate that offense until at least Nico Collins can come back and things might be a little bit easier. They'll be able to open up some playbook. He's a very dynamic guy, but until then, your quarterback and your running back are really going to have to step up. That defense is solid. They've been dealing with some injuries, but it seems like DeMeco Ryans, just like most defensive head coaches, on that side of the ball, there's really not much to worry about. They're going to be able to find ways to create turnovers to minimize the yardage, even if some of their key contributors are kind of week to week at this point. So, Houston Texans, I like them. They're going to be there at the end. But right now, it's a little bit of ebb and flow, and we're going to see how this team responds with the loss of Stephon Diggs for the whole year, fortunately. So, yep, we're going to keep it going here. We're going to go to number 8, and that is the Atlanta Falcons. Kirk Cousins getting it done against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Baker Mayfield. This team, man, they are they are a Jekyll and Hyde team. I don't know what you're going to get with them from week to week. And no, that is not their horror icon comparison, not Jekyll and Hyde. But I really don't know what you get with this team from week to week. There are some weeks where they look like a top 5 team in the NFL. Their defense can play well. They can get sacks. They can get some plays in the back end. And then their offense, sometimes they can run the ball really well. And then Kirk Cousins just slinging it down the field. Boom, 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 boom. And so, yeah, I'm not exactly sure what to get with them. But, I mean, they're coming off a big victory. This team is looking and playing well. They're 5-3. They're leading the division right now. They have a win over the number 2 Tampa Bay, and I think they also have a win over the Saints as well. So they are in good shape right now, midway through the season, and they're continuing to be able to create some big plays. Their last 2 wins, Carolina, Tampa Bay, in the division. They obviously had that 20-point loss over Seattle, which is, I still can't fathom that. That's why I'm saying sometimes you don't know what you're going to get with this team. But I think they're going to be, I think there's a 2-horse race, Tampa and them. But we're going to get to, since we're not going to talk about Tampa in this power rankings, they're dealing with injuries. Mike Evans. Oh my God, I'm trying to remember his name. Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin out for the year, basically, potentially, unless they make the playoffs. And Mike Evans, who knows when he's going to come back. That hamstring has been bothering him all season, and it's going to be a while before we see him. And you're seeing Baker force things now. He's not playing as precise and efficient as he was in the beginning of the season, but that's going to happen when you lose a future Hall of Fame wide receiver in Mike Evans and a Pro Bowl receiver in Chris Godwin. You're going to need to find those guys. They're going to make plays, and sometimes that means throwing the ball up and trying to see if they're going to make a play on it. Sometimes they do, sometimes they're not. And that's a big thing with Baker. He's going to give his guys chances. He's not a quarterback. He's not like Aaron Rodgers where he's going to be like, it's I don't like the thing, I'm going to throw it away. Baker's going to be like, screw it. I trust you, and I'm going to deliver the ball, hopefully right where it should be, and I'm going to have you go make a play. So Baker and this Tampa offense they're going to live and die over the next couple of weeks, at least until Mike Evans gets back. They're going to live and die by what Baker can do on that with his arm. And some weeks it's going to look great, and others it's going to be, what are you doing, man? So that's kind of basically what we're seeing with Tampa Bay. Their running game seems to be getting better. Now they have been able to get another running back in there who looks phenomenal for them. So hopefully they can continue to lean on some of that running game that has kind of been pretty darn solid for them. So we'll see where they'll go. But going back to the Falcons here, they're going to be a team. I think they're going to win the division. I think they're in their best position to do that. And we're going to keep on going with them. And I like their offense, man. I like their offense. I like enough of the players on defense. And I think their coaching is only going to get better as they figure out who this team is. So that is going to be the Atlanta Falcons. We're going to move it on to my number 7 team here, and that is the Commanders. And with the Commanders, obviously they're coming off a Hail Mary victory against and also if you can't tell, there's a 7 there. But the name took up so much of the space that I had to put the 7 somewhere else. So, this is not ESPN. I don't have an assistant to figure this out. Sometimes you just roll with it, baby. You just roll with it. And just like their victory, they technically lost in regulation. But guess what? There's always a little bit of room for an extra throw, and that's what we're seeing here. So that 7 represents their victory. They couldn't get it done in the amount of time that they should have, but guess what? When the 0 hits, as long as the ball is still in the air, there's enough time. That's what I'm going with. So, but yeah. Can you tell I kind of threw this up on the fly a little bit? But either way. So yeah, but Commanders, this offense looks phenomenal when Terry McLaurin is just playing lights out, and him and Jaden Daniels can get together and just connect on those deep balls. This offense is going to continue to roll. Their running game needs to be a lot better. They could not get any room to run against Chicago. And granted, Chicago is one of the better defenses in the NFL. But if you want to be in the playoffs or if you want to win in December and in January, you're going to have to run the ball, man. You're going to have to run the ball against some of the best defenses in the NFL. And they got to figure that out. They got to figure out a way to get these running backs in space, getting the ball, get the blocking, hit the hole, and just make plays. So that's the Commanders. Obviously, we know about Jaden Daniels. I'm not going to talk about him too much because I feel like I think we've done 2 of the Commanders games this season, and I've talked a lot about what I like about him. Guy seems to be so comfortable. He has the arm to make any kind of throw. Obviously, we saw that this past week. But on top of that, man, dude, the guy doesn't make dumb decisions, man. He's very smart. He doesn't play like a rookie. And he's going to be willing to take the checkdowns, live another day, and sometimes that will put you in games like this Bears game. Instead of trying to force it against a good team, being impatient and potentially setting that offense up, the Bears offense up for an extra field goal or an extra possession, he played within the system. He didn't force it. And as long as you can get the ball back, especially with a guy like him, you're always going to have a chance to win no matter where you are on the field. So, Commanders, also that defense freaking looked amazing against the Chicago Bears. Obviously, they kind of gave up a lot of yardage and points in the fourth quarter, but that's kind of the NFL sometimes. No matter what you do, the calls and things like that, it's just how it is. We've seen it with, again, some of the best defenses in the NFL. Look at the Ravens in week 2 or 3 when they were going up against the Cowboys. That defense has looked solid, but then they gave up a bunch of yards, things like that. Sometimes you're just going to have games like that where you're playing well, your defense is playing well for 3 quarters, and then the final quarter, whether they're tired or just something happens. That's how it is. But this Commander team, still one of the best in the NFL, and they're going to be there at the end. They're probably going to win the division, in my opinion. I think by mid-December, most likely they will be having wrapped up that division, and they're going to be competing for the top 3 seeds in the NFL, or in the NFC, in my opinion. So, yeah. All right, next we have, and this is going to be a little bit of a surprise for some people, but trust me, it's not a negative. It's very much a positive, and that is going to be boom, baby. That's the Green Bay Packers 6 this week. All right. All right. Some people are like, "Well, dude, you're a Packer fan. How do you have them not in the top 5 after back-to-back field goal victories?" Well, because I'm a Packer fan, I'm also very critical of this team. I love it. Win or lose, I'm going to be happy because I'm watching football. I'm watching my team compete. It's always going to be fun. Even if they get blown out or they blow somebody out, I'm having fun. So let me actually take this whole thing off because it is hot in this room. Oh my god. I literally have been dying with this thing on, and that was the whole point of the shirt. So hopefully that got a laugh from somebody, even if it's a laugh of wow this. But anyway, but yes, the Green Bay Packers. Why do I have them 6? They're 6-2. They're one of the best teams not only in the NFC but in all of football, and that's because one, the way that they have beaten some of these teams it's always been so close, and when you're living on a razor's edge like that, man, it's gonna be tough. Some of those wins, this team could easily be 2-6 right now. Okay, if it wasn't for Malik Willis being Malik Willis, who knows where we would be if Sean Clifford was the backup quarterback. I doubt we would have won any of these 3 games that Willis played significant snaps in. But having said that, the biggest reason for the Packers, one, obviously the last couple games, last second field goals, just happens. No big deal. But is the injuries. The 2 big things are the injuries and the way that this offense operates. So one, Jordan Love, we don't know if he's going to play this week. He had a little bit of a rough game. Granted, he was hurt from the first drive all the way through, but no touchdowns, 1 interception, was fairly okay, but you can tell that groin injury was affecting him. And on top of that, the defense giving up 27 points against one of the worst offenses, or at least ranking-wise, in the NFL. Granted, we know that the Jaguars have talent, but it's not great when you're giving up nearly 30 points against a team that has 2 wins on the year. But on top of that, they left this game with a lot of injuries. Jair, we don't know what his status is going to be coming this week or even the rest of the way, but luckily not a major injury. Evan Williams picked up an injury. He didn't come back in that game, and those 2 have been key factors. Quay Walker has also didn't play this past week, so this team is starting to deal with some injuries to significant players on their defense and on their offense as well. But what I like about the Packers is that's why I don't like. Oh, also on top of that, the offense, they can put up points in a hurry. We saw it this past week. We saw it against Minnesota. This team can score from anywhere on the field. Running, passing, they can do it all. But we've also seen in all the games that I've mentioned, Minnesota, Jacksonville, even with the Texans, they go stretches. They go back-to-back drives or even back-to-back-to-back drives where they don't get into field goal range at all. We've seen some key drops from Devontae Wicks. We saw a drop from Jaden Reed, granted, and then we saw against the Texans, we saw Romeo drop a pass that could have been for a first down. But having said that, this offense, like I said, is explosive, and the teams and the players that I've talked about, Romeo, Jaden, they also made huge catches when they needed to. Last week, it was Romeo making 2 back-to-back catches, basically, on that final drive that got them in the field goal range to beat Houston. And on time, and then this week, Jaden Reed, wide open, great route down the left sideline to get them inside the 20, and the Packers were able to kill the clock and set up a game-winning field goal. So it's the back and forth, it's the give and take of this offense. It's explosive, but then on top of that, it's kind of famine at times. And LaFleur has talked about this in the past. He's trying to get this team to be consistent, get the little yardage, get the plays that you should get, stop dropping passes, things like that, get the easy first down. That way we don't have to chuck it 15 yards down the field to get a first down, or potentially, throw it 35 yards in the air and hope that somebody blows a coverage for us to get inside the red zone. So those are the big things with this team. Explosive, but they got to work on consistency. So that is the Green Bay Packers. So very quickly, let's go with the horror theme that we have talked about early in this game. So for the Broncos, their comparison is going to be Jigsaw, that little puppet guy on the tricycle from the Saw franchise. Why? Because they've talked about it before. The convoluted and the length of the play calls in Sean Payton's offense is ridiculous. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look up YouTube. Sean Payton play calls. You're going to find it. It's ridiculous how long and convoluted those things are. Just as long and convoluted as not only the traps in the Jigsaw in the Saw franchise, but also those movies, man. There is 10 of them, and granted, I think I stopped watching after the fourth one. I don't know where they are in the timeline. I don't know who's who, what's this. It's a whole lot of confusion. You really got to be committed. You got to study those films. You got to study the timeline, just like you got to study those long-worded plays by Sean Payton. So for the Broncos, they are the Jigsaw for this Halloween. Next, we're going to go with the Houston Texans. They are Leatherface. Texas. Texans, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So some of these are going to be a lot more thought out than others. This is not one of them. Okay? If you wanted to make an argument, there's a lot of limbs in that franchise, and right now they're dealing with some major injuries. So, but yeah, otherwise, Texans, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, yeah. Like I said, some of these are going to be better than others. So next we got the Atlanta Falcons. This one is going to be more about the history of the Falcons than what they're doing this year, but they are the pinheads of the NFL. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, Pinhead is a horror. He's the guy with the white face, and he has like pins all over his head. And if you've seen those movies, it's like a weird, like, they enjoy pain. They enjoy inflicting pain and receiving pain. And 28-3, any blown lead that this franchise has had, they have tortured their fans. They have tortured themselves over their 40-plus history. These guys right here, these Falcons right here, bam. These guys are borderline masochistic what they do to themselves and their fans. So they are definitely the pinheads of the NFL. Hellraiser is the film franchise that I'm talking about. Anyway, next we're going to go with the Commanders, and there's going to be a little bit of a stretch, all right? A little bit of a stretch. They are the Xenomorphs. This is the Alien franchise. So a big reason is that this team, for all the good that they do, if they can, and just look at just look at this past game. They had the lead 12-0, almost 12-0 at some point. And then their fans were like excited, they were great, and then they just continue to shoot each other. Even when they're beating the other team, they somehow damage themselves. And if you know anything about the Xenomorphs, when you shoot them, their blood is acid, so when it sprays on you, it kills you. And that is the Commanders for most of their franchise or for sometimes this season. Even when they're beating the teams, they somehow find ways to hurt themselves. So, Xenomorphs. And then finally, the Green Bay Packers. They are the ghost face of the NFL. Scream franchise. Why are they the ghost face? Like I said, they are feast or famine. Even when they're throwing interceptions, they somehow always get their guy. They always get what they need to do. They'll stumble, they'll run, they'll bump into things, but somehow they're always there at the end, and they always somehow get you. And if you know anything about that franchise, Ghostface, he bumps into things, he falls downstairs, he does this or that, but somehow, even when you think you got away from them, he catches up to you and gets you. Green Bay Packers, ghost-faced. Alrighty. So, so hopefully you enjoyed some of those here. We're going to go into the top 5. Don't worry, we're going to go a little bit faster in the top 5 here. So hopefully you enjoyed those, even if how awkward and bad the framing is. But yeah. So I hope you enjoyed those. Now we're going to go into the top 5 here. And we're going to talk about the next franchise. And that is the Baltimore Ravens, 5th in the power rankings for Week 9. And the reason they are only 5th, and they're going to be behind some of the teams that you would think they would be ahead of, is because they lost to the Cleveland Browns. How do you do that? How? I know it's no longer Deshaun Watson there, but really? Famous Jameis? Mr. IEWs? You let him win? Ravens. Whether it's the Chiefs in the playoffs, or really most teams in the playoffs, somehow they always lose the game that you would think that they would win. And this is a win that they should have had. I mean, the Browns teams was literally a dead franchise. They were dead coming into this season, but when they lost, when they were 1-6, they just lost their supposedly best quarterback for the entire season. They somehow lose to a team that has been a running joke for basically since they traded for Deshaun Watson. But guarantee you the Baltimore Ravens, they'll bounce back. So that's why they're only 5th. They're not out the top 10. But once again, heading into this week, they are number 1 in first down percentage. They're efficient. They're number 1 in rushing yards. They're one of the most dominant offenses in the NFL. Their defense is not as good as it has been in the past. But when you got Roquan Smith, Kyle Hamilton, and that front 7, when you have players like that, yeah, you probably should have beat the Browns, but you're not gonna go into a spiral. This team is not gonna start losing 2 or 3 games at a time. They're gonna probably bounce back. They're probably gonna win their next 3 or 4, and they're gonna be competing for the 1 seed all the way through. So that's why the Ravens are 5th, but losing to the Browns, that's why you're not in the top 3. Next, we have a team, and this is going to be probably one of the more controversial rankings, or at least one of the positions. Some people are gonna be like, "What are you doing?" But obviously, let me speak. And that is the Pittsburgh Steelers at number 4, 1 position over the Baltimore Ravens. So, give me 1 second. So, the Pittsburgh Steelers, do I think they could beat the Ravens this week? No. But could I somehow see it that they just chuck a moon ball right down the field, Russell Wilson just throwing it up there, and somehow his receivers just come down with it, even though the coverage is about as tight as you can get? Is it possible that it is? Absolutely. This team, I don't know what has happened with them over the last 2 weeks, but they look like one of the better teams in the NFL. The first couple of weeks, their defense looked amazing. Then they had a little bit of a lull, Their offense was kind of feast or famine, similar to the Packers, but maybe not as explosive. But with Justin Fields, they were looking good. They were 4-2, but then they made the decision to bench him and start Russell Wilson, who I think I talked about it in the streams. He has been basically a meme over the last 2.5 years. When you said that they were going to start him, everybody was like, oh, he's going to be awful. He's going to be this. He's going to be that. There's going to be more news about him being weird than him winning games. And not only have they gone 2-0 with Russell Wilson, their offense, it looks amazing. Their passing game looks amazing. Russell Wilson has gone for nearly over 300 yards in each of his last 2 games. He has thrown touchdown after touchdown. He has challenged these defenses, throwing it deep down the field, not afraid to just chuck it up there. But then on top of that, they have been accurate passes, man. Like right on the money. And on top of that, his receivers are going up and making plays. They are responding to him. It's been wild. And on top of that, they're looking like they can run the ball. Their running game has improved with Russell Wilson. Like freaking Justin Fields, he was running the ball left and right. He was freaking leading the team and rushing in some weeks. But now with Russell, who has barely attempted to run the ball, and when he did, he actually got sacked and fumbled. But when he's been able to stay in the pocket, throw in rhythm, or even roll out of the pocket and find something, he's either been smart with the ball or he's been able to find an open guy and just deliver a flippin' dime. So right now, the Steelers are looking like one of the more complete teams. Couple that with their defense and their offense improving and potentially being a top 10 offense, this team could win the division from the Ravens, which a couple weeks ago we were like, no, the Ravens are going to run away with the division. They're going to compete for the top 2 seeds. The Steelers, if they can keep this going, man, they're going to be right there. So for this week, the Steelers are above the Ravens. They are the 4th ranked team in my power rankings. All right, next we have the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills, and that is, they are the 3rd ranked team in the NFL right now. Ever since they traded for Amari Cooper, that offense has looked completely different. Even with the offense still not being able to dominate on the ground, they've actually run the ball a lot better over the last couple of weeks. And I think obviously having a weapon that can be a threat in the passing game has made the defenses now focus more on that and, take out a player from stopping the run. It's opened up some of the lanes. I think they're getting healthy on the offensive line as well. But Josh Allen, he threw his first interception this week, and it did not matter. It did not matter. They won, and they're going to keep on freaking running, man. And right now they are 2nd in the NFL in rushing touchdowns. Their rushing yards are not where they want them to be, but they're getting there. But when they get inside the 10, this team is not afraid to run the ball. They are tough. They are going to freaking outwork you in the red zone, and they are one of the better teams in the red zone. And now that you have Amari Cooper, who is going to be able to help you get into not only enemy territory, but get you into that red zone by making great routes, getting first downs, continuing to move the chains. That was the biggest issue with the Bills early on. It wasn't, sometimes they would be explosive, but when they couldn't get those big, 20, 30 yard passes from Josh Allen when he's rolling out or anything like that, he was not able to get it to a guy that could just be running the correct route, get the 5, 6, or 7 yards that you needed to get a first down and move the chains. With Amari, he has that now. And on top of that, the running game is starting to get better, taking some more pressure off of Josh. And that defense is not great, but it's playing better. They're getting healthier too. And they have guys that can make plays, especially their front 7 is still pretty solid. They have a guy like Rasul Douglas in the backfield who can make some plays. He's always going to be around the ball, whether it's forcing a fumble, getting an interception, batting a pass. When you have a guy like that in your secondary, you're going to be pretty solid. So I think the Bills are going to be in there. They're going to be competing for the top 2 seeds. And at this point, they're going to be running away with the division. So they're going to be in the playoffs. They're going to be in the top 4 for sure. Because the Jets, no. Patriots, no. And, I mean, who knows what the Dolphins are going to do. Right now, they couldn't get a win with Tua. They looked a lot better, but they're 2-5. You know, the Bills, this is their division to lose, and I don't see them doing that. They're gonna run away with this division, and they're gonna be in really good shape. Heading into November, into December, as long as they stay healthy, and as long as that offense can continue to progress. So that is number 2 on the power rankings here. Sorry, number 3. Number 2, I debated whether to put this team number 1 because to me, they are the best team in football. And that is the Detroit Lions. So Detroit, defensively, they are amazing. Their defense is not perfect, but they have significantly improved their defense over the last 2 years. Their pass defense, which was a liability even when they were playing well the last 2 years, is now one of their, I want to say their strength, but it's definitely not anywhere near a weakness. They are above average. They have playmakers. They have invested some high picks into that secondary, and it's working. Their linebackers, I think, might be the weakest point, but they're still very solid players. They know the system, and the coaches put them in the best position to make plays, and that's stop the run and just eat up space in the middle. Their front seven, we're going to see how it looks consistently without Hutchinson. When he was healthy, I mean, the guy was, not only was he leading the NFL in sacks, but I think he had more sacks than the entire defense combined. So we're going to see how they look in their front seven, stopping the run. I think they're still going to be pretty good. And, but Eminem is going to come and get you. Oh, well, come on, man. Hey, man. My palms ain't sweaty. I ain't no spaghetti. Come on, Em. Come at me. But once again, and then now talking about their offense. Dude, they can run the ball. They can run the ball against anybody in the NFL. I don't care how good your defense is. I don't care if you're I guarantee you, if they play the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, they're gonna put up yardage against the Chiefs. It's not gonna be easy, but they have two dynamic backs. As long as they can stay healthy, they are gonna be a flipping problem. And it's going to be very, very interesting how the Packers play. Because right now the Packers have been playing pretty darn well, not only defensively, but also stopping the run. The last couple of weeks, the Texans, I think they gave up over 130-ish rushing yards. But this team has been one of the best in the NFL. But we're going to see how this Lions team, if they can run the ball and run the ball dominantly against the Packers, I think that's going to go a long way to show what the potential for this Lions team can be. And then talking about Jared Goff, the dude has been I think he might be a front runner. If not, he's going to be definitely in the top 3 in terms of MVP. The guy has not been flashy. He's not going to be like the Jaden Daniels or the Jordan Loves where it's like, holy cow, that throw was just insane. But, man, this guy just does not throw. One, he doesn't throw picks, but on top of that, I think he has almost as many touchdowns as he has incompletions over the last month. That's insane. That is not a normal thing. That's like Madden type of numbers. And even then, I don't think you can do that consistently in Madden. There's always going to be like a weird drop or something. This guy is playing like if he was in a video game. He's just finding where the open receiver is, throws it, and his playmakers on top of that, they're making plays, man. They're making guys miss, and they're explosive, man. Granted, they're gonna be without Jameson Williams for a couple of games because he got suspended again. But they have enough talent. They got the tight ends, they got the receivers, they got the running backs who can probably pick up some of the slack. Yeah, that whole team is a whole problem. And on top of that, you have a special teams unit that is one of the best in the NFL. It's actually something I should have talked about with the Steelers as well. Their special teams unit is ridiculous. They've blocked kicks, blocked punts, they've returned touchdowns. But anyway, back to the Lions. This is probably the most complete team in the NFL. Offensively, defensively, special teams, coaching wise as well. Some people don't like the way Dan Campbell coaches. He's sometimes too aggressive, going for it on fourth down, fake punts, fake kicks. That's probably going to doom them if it's anything like the Lions that we have known over the last century or half century, I should say. But something tells me that this team is going to be able to overcome that. And Dan Campbell, he knows himself. He knows this team. Sometimes it works. Some teams' identity it just doesn't work ever. This Lions team is going to be consistent. You know what you're going to get with them, and it doesn't matter. They're going to smack you in the mouth, and they're going to win the game. But not this week, baby. Green Bay is going to win. But either way, whether they win or lose this next coming week, Detroit's going to be there. They're going to be competing. They're going to get to the playoffs, and they're going to be a freaking problem for any team. Any team that faces them. I don't care if this team only makes the wild card. If they don't finish with the top seed, they're gonna be a problem. Wild card, divisional, NFC, championship, or even the Super Bowl. This team has everything that you need to win a championship, and I think they're gonna have a legitimate chance to win one this year, as long as they don't have another major injury like they did with Hutchinson. So, yeah. And then finally, as much as I hate it, I didn't want to do it. I probably should have put the Lions at 1, but at number 1, we have the Kansas City Chiefs. Why? 1, they are the final undefeated team in the NFL. Despite their offense looking kind of average still, they traded for DeAndre Hopkins, who didn't have the biggest week, but I guarantee you, if any team is going to be able to get the most out of him, it's going to be the Kansas City Chiefs. This is probably just going to take a week or two. And of course, that's going to be just the perfect time heading into November, the back half of the season. Of course, they're going to have a guy that's going to be hitting his stride, going to be familiar with the offense, going to find more rapport with Mahomes as he plays with them. And all that's going to do is open up more avenues for Xavier Worthy, Travis Kelce. And on top of that, they're going to get Isaiah Pacheco back within the next 2 to 3 weeks, if not maybe this week. I don't know. I didn't look at it, but he's going to be back by sometime in November and just in time for the playoffs, for that push. And on top of that, I've only talked about the offense so far, but the best part of this team is their defense. Their defense has been spectacular all season long. I've seen plenty of games because they're always in prime time, so I'm always streaming them. That defense, there's not a lot of teams in the NFL that can run against them. We saw the Ravens try to do it in week 1. Granted, it was week 1. But they could not get Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry had his worst game by 1,000 miles against this Chiefs defense. There has not been a team in the NFL that has been able to stop Derrick Henry to that extent. I think Derrick Henry finished with less than 20 yards rushing. It might have actually been worse. I don't know. I would have to look at it again, but he was a non-factor. It was so bad that they benched him basically in the second half. They're like, yeah, this thing ain't working. And on top of that, they can get pressure with any of them. Karlaftis, Chris Jones up the middle. They seem to always find guys. And on top of that, they keep on trading for guys that are probably going to be good for them. They traded for another guy, another pass rusher, Uche, from the Patriots. Granted, Uche is not he's not like, he's not going to be dominant. He's not going to be racking up 15 sacks, but the Chiefs are not trading for him for 15 sacks. They're trading for him for 3, 4, maybe an extra 5.5 sacks. Just getting into the rotation, making sure that when they get to the playoffs, they have a guy that can rush the passer, is athletic, is big, is strong, maybe possibly being able to stop the run as well. So this team is just getting deeper. They keep on trading for players, and they're also not giving up a whole lot of capital for them. I think it was a conditional fourth-round pick for DeAndre Hopkins. It might turn into a third if they make the AFC Championship game or they go to the Super Bowl. And if that's the case, that was worth it. And for Uche, I think they traded like a seventh-round draft pick or sixth-round draft pick in next year's or in 2 years draft or whatever. So, yeah, this team is just loading up, and they're only getting better. That offense is starting to finally look a little bit more consistent, and they're going to get healthy. They're getting healthier, and, yeah, it's annoying, but, yeah, this team is going to be there. So, yeah, Kansas City is my number one for this week. We will see if they can do anything over the next couple weeks, and we'll see if they can improve. So, with the top five here, let's look at these teams and their counterpart for the horror franchise, the character that I've chose to best represent them in this Halloween, this scary, spooky power rankings here on I'm Not a Coach. So, we talked about it. With the Ravens, they are the Pennywise of the NFL. Why the Pennywise? Because they build very slowly. This team is, if you looked at any of their games, they don't put up points in a hurry. But man, do they scare you on every single drive, because Lamar can burst out anywhere, whether that's a run, whether that's an end around with Zay Flowers, whether that's Derrick Henry just freaking popping off for an 85-yard run, despite being 31 years old and weighing about $156. It's like a linebacker. It's a linebacker that can run like a wide receiver in the NFL. That is terrifying, and it's just the fear of those players being on the field, because at any point they're gonna pop up and scare the crap out of you and just make a big play. So, but on top of that, just like they did this week and just like they did the last couple seasons in the playoffs, when they lose, it's hilarious, because they shouldn't. With all the powers that they have, somehow it's the easiest, dumbest thing that they lose to that defeats them. So they strike fear in you, it lingers, but somehow they're going to find a way to lose every damn time. So, the Baltimore Ravens, the Pennywise the Clown of the NFL. Next, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers. They are the Norman Bates. They are the Norman Bates of the NFL. So if you've seen the movie Psycho, hopefully you saw the original one, that guy, if you just saw him on the surface, you would think, oh, mild-mannered, pretty boring. Probably does high knees at some point in his motel. He's like a little bit of a weird guy. There's probably more talking about Russell Wilson than the Steelers, but yeah, just like Russell Wilson this year, Norman Bates, it's a freaking problem, man. He might be corny. He might look boring, but that dude is an assassin. That guy will kill you. He was going to come after you, man, all right? Pittsburgh Steelers with Russell Wilson, Mr. Dangerwitch, he's a danger, all right? Just like Norman Bates. They're going to be a problem. They'll sneak up on you when you're least expecting it. You think they're going to be boring? No. They'll be boring until they're not. And that's the most terrifying thing about the Steelers, because I don't know what the heck they're capable of. It's terrifying. All right. Next, the Buffalo Bills. Their character is Buffalo Bill from The Silence of the Lambs. You know what, dude? That's it. I don't really remember the character of Buffalo Bill. I don't really know any nuances. I know he's he said, put the lotion on the skin. But they're the Buffalo Bills. What is their best Halloween villain counterpart? It's Buffalo Bill. It's literally in the name. Like I said it before, some of these are going to be a lot smarter or a lot more complicated. This is not one of them. The Buffalo Bills are Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs. All right, next. Detroit Lions. Bam. They are the Jason Voorhees of the NFL. They are slow. They take their time. But when they come after you, just like in the Friday the 13th from 2010, that man runs. He's big. He's strong. And he's going to get you, man. You're not going to overpower him. You can maybe outsmart him. That's the best chance. That's the best chance you have against beating freaking Jason Voorhees, Detroit Lions over here. You have to outsmart them. You're not going to be able to outbeat them with muscle. You got to outsmart them. So the Detroit Lions, they are the Jason Voorhees of the NFL season during this Halloween season. And then finally, the Kansas City Chiefs, they are the Michael Myers of the NFL. Once again, similar to kind of Jason Voorhees, they are slow. They are almost boring at times. And no matter what happens, no matter if you've shot him, you've stabbed him, you've thrown him over, whatever, you know that they are not gone. You know they're not gone, man. No matter what. It doesn't matter if you're up by 28-0, like the Texans were not too long ago. The Chiefs linger. And there's always that weird it's on the back of your neck. You feel it no matter what happens. Can't get rid of them, man. And even when they got you, they're not like Jason Voorhees. They don't just take you out. They like to take their time. They're slow throughout the entire thing. They're boring. They don't say anything. And it's over. You're just wishing for it to be over. So the Kansas City Chiefs, they are the Michael Myers of the NFL. So, and on top of that, they're probably going to win another Super Bowl and go undefeated. Because that's what the NFL wants. They want a three-peat. It'll be the first time in NFL history. And on top of that, an undefeated season. It would sell tickets because as much as the NFL knows that people love to see history be made, the NFL knows that fans like us, we hate watch so many things. We hate watch our teams when they lose. We hate watch teams that like the Kansas City Chiefs because we need to see it. We need to suffer. We need to suffer because it's the Halloween season, and that's what and that's what the NFL season's all about. Torturing its fans. That's why they're sending the Carolina Panthers and the New York Giants to Germany this next week. Halloween it's going to be over by then, but for Germany, the horror is only just going to start. That should be a crime to send those two teams to compete. That is going to be a horrible representation of NFL football, and I feel bad for the fans of Germany because Halloween should be over on the 31st, but they're going to have to deal with it for a couple more days. But anyway, thank you so much. These took a lot longer than I thought, but hopefully you guys had some fun. Hopefully you guys can laugh either at some of the things that I've said or just laugh at me. It's okay. These are power rankings. These are not to be serious. Hopefully I'm wrong, especially about the Lions. But yeah, hopefully I'm wrong about these rankings because it would be nice to be able to switch it up the next couple weeks. But yeah, so enjoy the festivities for today and tomorrow. Hopefully you guys, everybody's safe this Halloween season. Drink, eat, spook somebody, but maybe not too much, right? Calm down, all right? Don't be a jerk. But hopefully you guys are having fun, and hopefully you enjoyed this. Please let me know. Leave a like. If this is your first time here, we're going to do power rankings every week. Don't worry, I'm going to try to shorten these up a little bit. They're not going to always have Halloween themes, so it'll be shorter then. Hopefully you had some fun. Please leave a like. Make sure you subscribe. It does help out the channel. Lets me know that you like things like this. And also, hey, man, we're going to be growing. We're going to be streaming 5 more games this week, starting on Thursday, tomorrow. So hopefully I'll see you guys then. And once again, my name is Dave, and I'm not a coach. Thank you.